Okay, I think it's 5 o'clock. Do you agree? This means that we agree on time, we just need to agree on space, and we've got an entire universe. We're ready to go. How are you all feeling? Tired? Sometimes, you know, you speak at conferences, and between about 3 o'clock and 5 o'clock, any chair is a bed for people. So you're giving this amazing presentation, and people are just going, yeah, it's incredible. Oh, it's like a duvet. Your voice is like a cushion. So. Hello. So my name is Maxim. I'm Maxim Jago. I don't know why. I was raised by intellectual hippies, and that's my name. So, but it's an interesting. It's it's like being raised by wolves, but with nicer biscuits, tea. So I want to talk about this question why a lot today. I've been really impressed by a lot of the technology that we've seen and the amazing creativity as well. It's a possible Jacques Tati moment there. And I think it's incredible that we've got these tools that remove barriers to creativity. But the question is, what creativity? What is it that we're trying to achieve when we create? I was making up an answer to that question in a session earlier today. And I think the answer is that what we're trying to do is cause change. We're trying to change people. And is anyone familiar with Maslow's pyramid? You know that you need air, water, coffee, food. Just in that order. I think coffee is at the top and the bottom. It's like one of those alpha omega things. It's my individual Maslow's pyramid. One of the items on that list of fundamental human needs is the need to be causal agents. It's the need for us to cause change. So for me, as a filmmaker, I think that being a prime mover, any metaphysics fans here? We can just geek out about, did you know quantum entanglement now? You can transmit data, it arrives before it leaves. This is a thing. Have you heard about that? It's real, it's a thing. Come over to we'll do the metaphysics corner at the end. So a prime mover, in philosophical terms, is an originator of action, not somebody who was caused to act, but someone who caused. So as creatives, our measure of what we do is not whether we enjoyed it. Well, actually, for some people, that is whether we enjoyed it. But the measure is whether we cause change in the emotional state for our viewer, change in the memories, the experiences, the feelings that people have. And it's a very interesting fact that the part of your brain, you didn't know we were going to do philosophy and psychology, and the part of your brain that has experiences does not differentiate between things that you experience and things that you imagine or remember. Which means if you create a story where your audience is able to empathize with a character and therefore takes an emotional journey with that character, they literally experience what the character does themselves firsthand. Isn't that powerful? That's what you're doing when you make films. Then again, if you make a film that nobody can care about, because no matter how hard they try, there's no depth to the character and there's no authenticity, they literally check Facebook every few minutes. So how do we do that? How do we make something that really feels real, that has authenticity? And I think that's the elusive magic of cinema, which I'm going to talk a little bit about. I'm going to pretend I have any clue about. Before I do, so I make films. I've directed about 50 short films and one feature-length documentary. I'm working on my first fiction feature film project for theaters now. It's called Orpheus Rising. It's a love story thriller about a contract killer who's unusually compassionate, falls truly, madly, deeply in love, and it forces him to become a truer version of himself. It's like every love affair, but with guns. It's kind of very, very similar, in my experience, anyway. So it's a very interesting project because it's cross-media, and what we're going to do is we're going to make a game that is the sequel, and we're going to release it on the same day. So you've probably heard of the concept of crossing the fourth wall. That's where actually Bertolt Brecht came up with this idea in theater, where somebody playing a particularly nasty character would come out of character and say to the audience, look, I'm just an actor, by the way. I'm not enjoying this. This is just my job. So don't beat me up after the play. And then they'd go back into character and do something horrible. So that's crossing the fourth wall. What we're going to do is we're going to have the audience cross the fourth wall. So we're going to rebuild the environment of the film in the game. And you're going to step into the shoes of the lead character, and the narrative is going to continue. So that's Orpheus Rising. It's a project I'm working on at the moment. I also write this. This is the Premiere Pro Classroom in a Book. So anybody who's learning to use Premiere Pro, if I've made mistakes, just email me. You don't need to say it on Amazon in the comments. You know, it's you can just tell me. It's okay. I had a 1-star review for this book on Amazon where the reviewer said, "I've got no problem with the content of the book, but the paper's a bit cheap." So thanks. So So I want to give this away, but so can anyone tell me the answer to the secret of life, the universe, and everything? Oh my God, that was way too fast. I feel like, okay, I'll come up with another question. That was too. And I got and I have 23 courses on lynda.com. So if you come down at the front, I've got some cards here with 1 week free access. So I teach a lot and I make a lot of films. Anyway, let's move on. So all of that intro is just to say that I'm highly opinionated. I'm also writing a metaphysics PhD on the nature of being, and I'll save you reading it. The conclusion is to get on with it. It's pretty good advice. So that and sunscreen. I forget the lyrics from the song. So I have this list of things that Adobe wanted me to speak about, and I've worked on a lot of low to no budget films. And we know when you're working low to no budget, there are certain things that always get lost. They always just don't happen. And there are a couple of things that I wanted to highlight that I really think are worth prioritizing. Now, I'm a director, so I'm going to approach this from a director's point of view. I've edited an awful lot of stuff, although I tend to avoid editing other people's films now because there's some really bad independent short films out there. And I tend to avoid editing my own things anymore because, for the first reason. But also because the editor, like anybody else, is a creative contributor to the project. And one of the things that I love about filmmaking, who was that? Can we just stare at them? Oh no, you told me about parties in New York. You can stay, that's okay. So one of the things about filmmaking is that it's a team effort. And my job as a director is not to be in charge. My job as a director is not to be right. My job as a director, like any good manager, is to enable and facilitate everybody else fulfilling their own genius. And my feeling is, if you don't trust somebody, don't hire them. And if you do trust them, then your job is not to command and control and restrict their creative process, but instead to understand what they need and give them that so that they make something incredible. That's why when my DP says, oh, I've got to, I know the shot you want, but can I show you something else? Absolutely. My job is to have a vision and to be able to communicate that vision. And I always feel that directing is a bit like being a tuning fork, where you're the one with the tuning fork, you're the one with the note, and somebody comes to you with ideas, they've got different suggestions about how to do something, and that includes editing, performance, lighting, you name it. All you have to do is listen, metaphorically, I mean you can, but listen to see if it's in tune. And if it is, it fits the vision. If it's better than my idea, great, it makes me look like a better director, awesome. If it doesn't fit the vision, then chuck it out, it doesn't work. So people very quickly realize with me that I welcome all the suggestions and it's nothing personal, it either fits or it doesn't. So when it comes to prioritizing your use of budget, I think it's really important to think about whether it's going to serve or not serve the vision, or serve or not serve the story. So for example, having an assistant director, please, goodness me, have an assistant director. If you don't have an assistant director, you cannot stay on top of everything you're doing creatively because you're too busy thinking about whether the camera position is set correctly or are the actors in their trailers. So even on a very low budget film, you need to have that. And has anyone sat in on Dove Simmons' workshops? Anyone heard of Dove Simmons? Travels around doing it. You can react, it's okay. No, no, no. So he does this fantastic workshop about low to no budget filmmaking for guerrilla filmmakers. And he says that when you get to set, the coffee should be perked, not perking. There's this distinction that the coffee must be ready when you arrive. I never shortchange the catering for a production. I don't mind shortchanging costumes, lighting, never shortchange on audio. You know, it's true that when people say that if you've got great pictures with bad sound, people say that was an amazing student film. And if you've got great sound and terrible pictures, they'll say that was an incredible experimental film. Which would you rather be? But the thing is that we're in the business of recreating reality. What we do is represent reality in a way that we hope will jar little enough that the audience has an experience. And we are particularly critical of sound problems. We're very, very good at spotting discontinuity or phase issues or anything like that. Don't skimp on the sound. But to be honest, most people in your audience, they barely see what's happening on screen. And I don't want to ruin this experiment for anybody, so don't mention it if you have, but has anyone heard of the basketball experiment, the consciousness basketball experiment? Okay, those of you who've heard of it, just nod and feel clever. Those of you who haven't, do a Google search and don't ruin it for yourself. Just find one that lets you watch the video. But the gist of it is that as a species, we have so little consciousness, most of us turn the radio down when we park the car. Just think about that. We have so little consciousness that listening to music is too much distraction for us to reverse park. Right? So when you're working on a film, what you really need to focus on when you're prioritizing investment in budget, things like costumes, all that kind of stuff, what matters is that we perceive relatively, we learn associatively, we see color, we hear sound relative to what we just saw and heard. So what matters more than anything else is continuity, thematic continuity, movement continuity. And actually, whether they're wearing a watch in this shot or not, your audience probably doesn't know. They're probably not going to notice, except for those really annoying people who write things on Amazon like, well, I think you'll find, you know, I would have given it 5 stars, but on that second shot, his watch was on his other wrist, and it happens. So in terms of prioritizing budget, my advice is to try to remember what you notice as a person when you're working on things. I have a friend, I'm perhaps a bad example. I had a friend who had a massive beard for about 5 years, and I met him, and it took me 2 straight hours to notice he'd shaved it off. And after 2 hours, I said, you know, there's something about you that you look younger. I don't know. So, so that's how I would prioritize budget. Now, I want to show you a little example of a film. Before I do, yeah. So time, there are certain things that we're really going to focus on in terms of budget. We're thinking about money, but it's not just about money. It's also about time. There's a film I'm going to show you a part of called Strongheart. Oh, I forgot to mention, so I won Best Director in Monaco this year in May. Thank you. Thank you very much. No, keep going. So, and it was short films, and one of the films that won the award, beautiful little film, I think, we just got distribution. And we were literally running. I've never had this before on a shoot. We were literally running from setup to setup because the sun was going down, and I was very excited. Did you see in the keynote the new features thing with the, ooh, oh. You know, you have to make sure no producers ever see that, because they're already way too good at saying no. So actually, one of the most precious commodities you have when you're working on budgeting a film is time. But it's not just, I want to skip to the end one here, focus. It's not just time in terms of how many minutes do I have in the day. It's time where you are mentally focused and present. Anyone heard of the German philosopher Eckhart Tolle? You weren't expecting so much metaphysics, were you? But it's coming. Eckhart Tolle wrote a book with a silly name, amazing book called The Power of Now, and he talks about the fact that the past is half remembered and the future is imagined, and the only moment in which you are truly an actor is this one. This moment is the moment in which you are having experiences and responding to them. It's a fantastic guy in London called Simon Phillips. If you ever come to London, he teaches directing skills, and he says essentially performance is about perceiving something and making a decision about it. That's like life itself. So when you're looking at whether a performance is natural and authentic or not, if it's not, it's probably because, as a director, you've neglected that your character has to perceive something and make a decision about it. If your actor walks onto the set already feeling an emotion that they've got no reason to feel yet because they haven't seen the thing that they're supposed to respond to, the performance will not seem authentic. And authenticity is all I'm interested in. As a director, my mantra on set is if you're not feeling it, I don't want to see it. And it's my responsibility to give the feelings to the cast, not theirs, so they can relax. They can blame me when it goes wrong, and if I tell them it's right, we can move on. So as a director, your responsibility is not just to manage your time. Actually, you want the producer and assistant director and production manager to deal with that. Your responsibility is to manage the focus for your crew and for yourself, because you haven't got 24 hours of focus time each day. Depending on how much coffee I've got, I might have 3 hours of focused attention. So you need to think about where the energy is going to be high and how to focus everybody's attention at that time. So one of the things I do is I always make the first shot of every shoot really simple, even just a cutaway. I want the crew to experience me saying action and cut and everything in between so that we know we've got something in the can and we can move on. So time, energy, and focus, these are absolutely crucial. Right, I'm going to come back to that. It's a very cool idea, but I'm going to come back to it. Before I do, I want to show you, how much time have we got? Yeah, let's just do it. I just want to show you this film. This film, amazingly, in a different festival, won both Best Actor and Best Supporting Actor. I was quite pleased with it, because it was a one-day shoot. It's 4 minutes. You ready? Take a deep breath. Do you get Jackanory here? Do you get story time? Are you sitting comfortably? Are you sitting comfortably? This is going to be a journey. Okay, it's a comedy.
Can I just have a cup of tea, please?
Okay, can I get you anything else?
No, thanks. Oh, I'll have a small packet of biscuits, please.
Isn't that great fun? I absolutely love it. And of course, in Britain, a cup of tea without a biscuit is a lonely place. You know? We call them biscuits, you call them cookies, but I feel I have a duty to push back a little bit on the language a little bit. I hope you know that in Britain, pants literally only means men's underwear. You know that, don't you? Which is why when anybody American comes to London, they say, oh, my pants are dirty, I need to change them. That's why everyone laughs. Okay, so Theft Unexpected was a film that we shot in a day, and actually I supplied some of the assets for the book here, so if you work through the exercises, you can recut that scene. And what's interesting for me about it is the way that the characters are actually having two different conversations at the same time. So on the one hand, they're talking nonsense about, you know, what's in the crossword or, you know, what's happening with the recession. But in reality, you know, this is actually based on a Douglas Adams story, if anyone's read Hitchhiker's Guide to the 40s. Well, of course, some of you have. And so there's a beautiful description in the original story from Douglas Adams where he says the beauty of this story is that somewhere in the world there's another man. So it's written first person. Somewhere in the world there's another man with exactly the same story who doesn't know the punchline, who just thinks an annoying person helped themselves to their cookies, which I thought was brilliant. So, but we actually shot this in a day. And it was a really challenging shoot because the environment was very, very noisy. And one of the things that you don't always think of when you go to a location is that you might have sound problems. And you don't always have the budget for automatic dialogue replacement for ADR. Now, ADR is getting cheaper and it's easier. For those of you who aren't familiar with it, the idea is that you record any old sound on location, and then you go to a studio afterwards and you record the actual vocals. And one of the problems with ADR, or maybe it's not a problem, is that the acoustics are different to the location sound. And so that's why you can have somebody in a noisy station having a conversation at a distance from the camera, and it sounds like, hello, darling, I love you. And it's because the microphone behaves like the ear of the listener. And of course, this is so common now that if you don't have ADR vocals, it sounds weird. Has anyone noticed that? You see a film, and it actually has natural acoustics, and it seems strange because we're used to it. Now, I'm going to come back around to this, but I have a theory about why we're learning film language and why we're adapting to it, and why what matters the most is not that it's naturalistic and realistic, but rather that the experience for the audience is natural. So it's okay if ADR vocals aren't natural. So we had a great time with this, actually deciding. And the guy on the right there, he actually, I think we got through 14 packets of those custard creams in the course of the day. And the guy on the left was saying, I never want to eat another biscuit. And the guy on the right was saying, no, I can take a few. Just no problem. We had one interesting problem, which comes up, of course, sometimes, is that an actor just can't do a thing. And the guy on the left there, Maurice Byrne, is a fantastic actor. He was saying, well, when I was brought up as a child, I was told you should never sip your tea while you're still chewing a biscuit. It's just very bad manners. And I said, well, just in this world, it's okay. It's all right. And he really struggled with it. And that's why you can see he only takes small bites, because that way he could chew it really quickly before it was time to drink the tea. It's a true story. So as a director, I don't really care if, unless it's relevant to the plot, unless it's significant for the story, I don't really care if we adhere to the script precisely. I know that's sometimes more of an issue than others. But what I care about is that the energy, the sentiment of the scene works. I almost see characters in a scene as forces of energy that clash and meet and combine and make a fusion. That's the drama. So in this scene, you've got the guy who we thought of as the banker on the right, who's just a bit passive-aggressive. I don't know if you notice when he says, is this seat taken? There's a little beat. There's just a little pause before he says yes, which is that, only child, but it's my seat, kind of reaction. So we wanted that energy coming from that character, and we wanted the other character to be a bit more bustling, a little bit more uncertain, a little bit less aware, because that explains why he doesn't notice that he's put his biscuits underneath the newspaper. You need to believe that he wasn't paying attention. So I don't really care what the dialogue is. In fact, we made it up on the morning of the shoot. We worked out what they would say. And I still don't know what the clue theft unexpected means, but I think the film comes up with it. So I wanted to talk a little bit about this idea, oh, that's the wrong one, of the mask and the person. And this is another life lesson I've learned from filmmaking. The thing about people is that we learn from a very young age that we should not reveal our inner thoughts to people. Now, there are some occasions I would love to know what's going on in somebody's mind, and there are other occasions I really definitely don't want to know. So when we're making films, remember, this is just my opinion, you can just ignore everything I'm saying, of course. But from my experience as a filmmaker, it's crucial for me as a director that I recognize the difference between the mask and the person behind the mask. Because those two different characters are what make the nuanced performance. They're what make it real. That's why, boy meets girl, boy thinks, oh my goodness, she's amazing, I've got to ask that girl out. And he's thinking inside, I'm just going to ask her out. I'm just going to say, let's get coffee. Or and he's running through his mind thinking about films where the cool line came out and everything worked. And on the outside, he says, oh, no. And the girl thinks, you're crazy. I'm not going to go anywhere near you. But on the outside, she says, oh, that's nice, and she goes away. So this difference between the mask and the person is crucial for filmmaking, in my view, in two important ways. The first way is when you're developing character and performance, you need to talk about both. You need to think about how the person presents themselves to the world by choice or unintentionally, because we don't make, I think the masks that we wear are masks that are shaped from the inside and the outside. So we don't have total control on that interface between us and the world. So we have to talk about that. And we also have to talk about the character's inner intentions. They call this, in theater, they call this the super-objective, or the objective of the character. And I think what it comes down to is, what do you want and why can't you have it? And that applies in each scene. But this idea is also crucial on set when you're talking to somebody who is a pain to work with. I've told this story many times, I was working on a TV pilot. And we had a gaffer, a lighting guy, who was absolutely brilliant. He was 40 years in the business. You know, he worked on Indiana Jones, and in my book, he's just, you know, royalty. It's amazing. So every time I called for quiet on set for a rehearsal, not for a take, but for a rehearsal, he would still make noise. And the first time I thought, oh, he didn't hear me. And the second time I thought he didn't understand. And the third time I thought, he's just being belligerent now. This is deliberately ignoring the assistant director. So I went and spoke to him, and I forgot his name. It was years ago. John, let's say his name was John. I'm just going to, John or Bruce, one or the other. So if you meet lots of people, it's easier to just think of them all as Bruce, just come up with a name. Yeah, male or female, doesn't matter. So I said, you know, John, just so you know, I called for quiet on set for that rehearsal, and you were still making noise. It was a little bit distracting for the cast. Just appreciate it if you could keep an eye on that. And he said, listen, my boy. Now, here's the thing. My ego is big enough for someone to call me boy or insult me. It's fine. I can take it. It's good. So what was important is that he told me with those 3 words that he was feeling insecure. Because usually people's behavior is the opposite of how they're feeling. They're compensating. So what he did was try to make me feel small because he felt small, right? Yeah? So he said, listen, my boy, I've been in this business 40 years. You don't have to tell me how to do my job. I know when it matters, and I'll be quiet when it matters. So what do? Now, I checked with health and safety. You're not allowed to hit people with, you know, apparently it's illegal. So, no, what I said was, I said, John, your experiences are multiple of mine, and I feel blessed to have you here. It's wonderful to learn from you, and I'm really grateful that you're working with us. But I'm the assistant director on this shoot, and if I ask for quiet on set, I just got to have it. It's my job. I have to have quiet on set. And he literally, like a cartoon, went, didn't even say anything. I don't even know what that noise is. Next time I called for quiet on set for a rehearsal, he happened to be in the room with us, and he kicked a light. He was opposite side of the room, and I looked at him, and he literally looked back at me like this. And he was lovely for the rest of the shoot. The point is that in his mask, what he was doing was saying, I'm important, don't mess with me. You know, this shoot's beneath me. That's how powerful I am. Inside, as a person, he was feeling insecure because he wasn't being appreciated enough. Because with all that experience, he wanted people to say please and thank you a little bit more. And by acknowledging him, by showing appreciation for him, I recognized him. You know, we say hello in the West. When we meet people, we say hello. That comes from the Roman hail. It means I see you. It means I recognize you. And you wouldn't necessarily recognize all people. Some people you would ignore. So appreciation is crucial. But you have to appreciate the person inside. And I happen to believe that nobody really grows up beyond about 7 years old. I'm still missing the Spider-Man Frisbee I had when it was awesome. It was beads and it was great. So when dealing with conflict on a shoot, you haven't got much time. There isn't time for your ego to clash with somebody else's. If you're in charge, you're in charge. There's no need for you to prove it. What you need to do is bestow that appreciation and that gratitude, and you'd be amazed how powerful that is. When you're in a position of authority, your thanks carries more weight than if you're not. So if somebody is being a pain, think about what the 7-year-old inside of them is probably feeling. You'd be amazed at the effect it has on a production. So, I can't remember what else I put in here. Yes, and there it is. If you get conflict, you respond to that with conflict, guess what happens? More conflict. I was on a shoot when I was at college many, many years ago. What was the film? It was called Chaos Theory. It was the first thing I directed first 16mm film I directed at film school. And the sound recordist had an argument with the producer, locked herself in her car, and rolled a joint with the audio equipment. And I was okay with her locking herself in the car. I was not okay with her locking the sound recording equipment in the car, because it meant we had to make a silent film. So I could have shouted at her through the window and being aggressive and demanded, I'm the director, ruining my shoot. You know, it's very important to go, you've got to back of the throat. But I actually just said, look, I'm sorry that you've had some conflict with the producer, and it's really annoying, and I'm not trying to defend him. Take 5, take 10, but you really need to give us the sound equipment. So being understanding and forgiving is better. So conflict plus compassion, which is difficult to do on set, but very powerful, means you get to drink tea with people. So one of the things I do is I teach Tai Chi Chuan. Anyone heard of Tai Chi? You've heard of Tai Chi, yeah? Tai Chi, you know, very slow moving. You see these old people in the park in China, and they're moving like this, yeah? So it's a martial art. So when you've been practicing martial arts for about 10 or 15 years, and you realize that you really don't want to fight anybody, what you want to do is drink tea with them instead. So when people are aggressive on set, when there's conflict, when there's disagreement, it's crucial that you define the boundaries, that you agree what is agreed. If I'm the assistant director and I'm asking you to do something, this isn't a question of whether we like each other. This is a question of the assistant director asking somebody to do something. And there's no need to add emotion to it. Okay, so, so I wanted to talk about planning backwards. But before I do, I want to show you another little bit of a film. This is a lovely piece. This was, we shot this 4K RAW on the F-55. This is the one that got me the award in Monaco. And it's a serendipitous love story. This is one where we were literally running from location to location. I'll just come back to that in a second because I want to show you a little bit of this first. Let me start off a little part of the way through it. This is a film called Wildfire. This film was, this was BAFTA shortlisted not many years ago, a few years ago. And it's a lovely little piece, but I want you to watch really carefully. I'm just going to play about a minute. I want you to see if you can spot what's wrong with this film. It's very, very subtle. The idea is that it's contagious, and people are joining in the party. Okay, you get the idea. It's lovely, isn't it? Full of energy, lots of life. My brief to the producers was, I want 9 people. I want each person to have a camera that they know how to operate on automatic with batteries, with a tape in it or a card in it or whatever it is. And I need at least one couple because the end of the film leads up to this little moment here. Isn't it lovely? So, it was a bit of a problem because what I actually got was 5 people, 3 cameras. The couple at the end actually just came so that their kids could be in it and refused to be on camera. And we arrived on location ready to shoot this film. And if you look, I don't know if I can show, let me just find an example. Where is he now? There's a section where you can see the guy in orange. Oh, no, not there. Where is it now? One of the guys is using his wallet as a phone or as a camera. So, so you get to the you get those moments. Sometimes I feel like people always say, Maxim, it's incredible. You're so relaxed when bad things happen. And I always feel it's like Crocodile Dundee when the guy pulls the knife and she says, he's got a knife. And Crocodile Dundee says, that's not a knife. That's a knife. And when you've had this range of experience, things go wrong and you just go, oh, okay. So we have no lights, camera, or performers. Let's make a film. So the first thing I had to do was persuade the couple that even though they were just there to chaperone their children, it would be amazing if they were on camera. And it's okay, you don't have to dance, you just have to run around a bit. No, really, you don't have to dance. Just sort of run around a bit and turn while you're doing it. There you go, it's dancing. And then we had this problem where what I wanted was a 9-way split. I wanted 3 by 3, so that we would cut in and out and the camera angles would come in. And it was all about people filming each other and the contagion of media. And I thought it would be awesome. And it still worked out quite well. BAFTA Shortlisted is not bad for a short film. But I think that the key to having a low-stress production is to begin at the very end and plan backwards. This is old news, right? So what you do is you start, in my view, with how the audience feels as they are walking out of the cinema. I only want to make 3 feature films. The second one is an inverted morality vigilante film. It's going to be brilliant. Has anyone read the Frank Miller Dark Knight Returns, the original graphic novel? Yeah, right? It's amazing. So I thought, I'll never get the money. No one's ever going to give me permission to make that. So I'll just take the bits I like and make that instead, and make that film. So I've created a character, the script's written. And if you come out of the cinema thinking about the story, what you'll realize, there's a good guy and a bad guy. And what you'll realize is that the good guy is just angry, and he's a vigilante, he's stopping crime. So ethically, he's a crime fighter, but morally, he's just an angry man punching people. And the bad guy, who's a genuinely good person, is using the only method he knows to make the streets safer, which is to control crime. So ethically, he is a criminal, but morally, he actually makes the streets safer. He is a good guy. So I want the audience to be coming out of the cinema thinking about that as they walk away. Orpheus Rising is a film about purpose. It's about how we become what we become and whether we can change. And I hope the answer is yes. So as you come out of the cinema, you'll be thinking, did he really succeed in changing? Did he really succeed in becoming another man? And am I who I want to be? Am I able to make that same kind of transition? So if I start with that moment when people are walking out of the cinema and plan backwards, what do I need to show them on the screen? And to get that on the screen, what do I need to supply the projection house? And what do I need to get to the cutting room? And what do I need to get into the camera? And you can work your way backwards and plan that way. It's the best way I know to avoid unexpected results like this. And there's another one I can show you as well. This is great. Just look at that room. I was immensely proud of this production. It's a very strong scene. It's about 9 minutes. I won't play all of it for you. But if anybody emails me, I'll send you the link. It's hidden online because we just got distribution for it. Oh no, we didn't for this one. So you can see this one online. It's called The Party's Over. It's about a woman meeting a friend after she's been assaulted at a party. And it's a very serious dialogue. And we don't know who he is or what their relationship is, but we suspect it's probably him. So there's this very powerful dialogue between the two of them. He's a great writer. And the story unfolds as the two of them have this conversation. I'll play you the opening in a moment. My brief to the producers was that I need a minimum of 8 extras. Just look at the shot. Ideally 12. Ideally 12, a minimum of 8. 48 hours before the shoot, they told me, we've got you 1. And I'm thinking, that's not the scene I had in mind. They're talking about sexual assault. They're talking about something very, very personal, something very important, something that they would not want to share publicly. But the idea is, remember I was talking about the energy of the scene. The idea is that this girl, I'll show you the opening, it's played by Claire Garvey. She's absolutely a fantastic actress. You know, when you do your casting and you get to the end of the day and you think, how am I going to cast this character? Every single person is wrong. And in true Hollywood fashion, I'd cast her by the time she sat down. She was the last one. And I'd had all of these women come in for the part who were saying, yeah, it's about date rape, so I'm going to fight that, and I'm going to be really strong, and I'm going to, confront this guy about what's happened. And I was explaining that's not how it works. When somebody gets assaulted, they can barely get out of the house. It's terrifying. you don't get out there and confront people and be strong. It's just that the loss of the friendship is more frightening than the fear of dealing with life. So it's a question of balancing fears when something like that happens to you. And Claire came in and she sat down very quietly and said, "Hello, I'm Claire. I've come for this part." And I was just thinking, "I'm done. You're in." But we had this problem because I wanted this very shy character. I'll show you the opening. I wanted this very shy character I wanted her to feel like she could barely speak at the beginning, but he reacts the wrong way. This is the story. You can see it online. He reacts the wrong way. Instead of being encouraging and nurturing and supportive, he reacts aggressively, which happens sometimes. And that's what we wanted to deal with in this film. This is an important thing, that people don't always give you the support you need. When I run out of coffee, I want sympathy and hugs. And people just laugh at me. It's, what's going on? So there has to be that moment where she stops caring that she's being listened to. There has to be that moment where she becomes so angry and so incensed that she loses her inhibition, which is difficult to do with one extra. So in the end, we managed to find a couple extra. But I'll show you the intro, because one of the things I wanted to achieve with this was setting up the mood. And it's a very gentle start, but I hope you'll agree it's quite mesmerizing. So this is just the first couple of minutes. Except we don't seem to have any sound there. What's going on? Hold on a minute. That doesn't work. Where's my sound? How wonderful. Let me just pull that in again. Hold on, because I was still transferring files over, and I really want you to see this. Let's pull this in again. And talk amongst yourselves. La, la, da, da. There we go. Okay. Okay, good. Let me just crank the volume up a bit, because it's a little bit quiet. Oh, no, it's there. Okay. See if you can just catch the beginning of this. That's me. Can you hear that? Is it too quiet? It's quiet, isn't it? I tell you what, I want you to hear this. I'm just going to do this is how you adjust the audio gain in Adobe Premiere Pro. So just right-click on the clip, choose audio gain, and let's just normalize. Let's normalize the max peak to about -12 dB. Click OK. Let's have a listen. No, it's just the system. So go back in, set this to, oh, look at that. Let's just do +6 dB. And have a listen to that. It's still pretty quiet, isn't it? It sounds like someone's messing with my speakers. Let's do +12 dB and make it pure rock and roll. Oh, did I do minus? Whoever said that wins the award for... There we go, that's better. Okay, let's just go from here.
And jealousy will appear. My eyes move unsteady. My feet feel heavy.
That's it. Isn't that beautiful? Nobody says anything for 2 minutes, but you feel like you're totally there with the characters. There's a moment in her performance, check it out online, there's a moment, I won't ruin it for you, but there's a moment where she's very upset later on. He reacts very badly. If you can see the frame there, she's very unhappy. She cried 14 times for me in one day. And there's a moment where the crew were welling up watching her performance. I mentioned this in a session earlier on. People in the crew watching her were starting to lose it. And you'll see it, there's a moment where you feel that in the back of your neck, you feel the hairs go up because of the intensity of her performance. And what I did is I took her there, I took her through that emotional journey, I gave her that background so that she could really take that emotional journey. And I always say, you're performing for me, you're not performing for the camera, you're not performing for the crew or the audience. I'm your audience, I'm going to sit right next to the camera. I will tell you when it's right. So just relax about everything else going on around you. There's a tradition in shamanic cultures, here we go back into the metaphysics. In shamanic cultures, there's this concept of holding the space. Has anybody heard of that? You hold the space, you create the environment. And as the director, I think that's your responsibility. You hold the space in which people feel safe to create magic, to do wonderful things. So the problem with this is that would be 2 blank pages in a script. It's 2 minutes where nothing happens. And how do you write that? Well, what you don't, do you? You write a couple of lines where it says, Chris arrives, he sits down, he orders a coffee, and he waits. And then Liz arrives. This is the female character. So how do you write that in a way that's engaging for the reader? So what I've started doing is I write reader's drafts of scripts. So Orpheus Rising, the next project I'm working on, I won an award for it. Isn't that awesome? So I wrote it as a reader's draft with a lot more parenthetical information, in brackets. You're not allowed to write he thought, she thought. You're not allowed to write anything that you can't see or hear. That's the rules. But you can say as if. You can say that aggressive in the style of, in the way that is like this. And I'm quite poetic with my use of descriptive text. I use a lot of, not alliteration, a lot of repeated, broken language in the text in order to carry the mood and the style, the atmosphere of the piece. And I think that's crucial because otherwise, this reader, who may not be a filmmaker, and may not be an actor, or a director, or an editor, is probably going to think, oh, so he sits down and he waits for her to arrive. No, he sits down in a great state of tension. And look at this moment when she walks in, there's this, just look at this movement from him. Look at that. You see that? It's really subtle, isn't it? I'm just going to go back and show this again. I think this is brilliant. Just watch his reaction. He sees her for the first time. Look at that. He makes himself vulnerable. See how emotional he is. And there's a thing with, you can see, now I've told you this, but you'll see politicians do it. When you turn your head and you reveal your neck, what you're doing is making yourself vulnerable for the other person. So it's a way of being non-threatening. It's why when you come home and a dog greets you, they often roll on their backs. They show you their bellies in order to make themselves vulnerable. And there's a beautiful book by a guy called Desmond Morris. He's a zoologist, very famous in the UK. And he made millions out of this book called The Naked Ape. Has anyone heard of The Naked Ape? It's a fantastic book. And it's about us as a species viewed as if by a zoologist. So he looks at our behavior. And he made millions, and he said he spent all of the money on, I think, women and gambling and whiskey. And he said none of it was wasted. It's true. So he said if you want to understand body language, all you need to do is look at, as far as we can tell, we're related to every living thing in the world. As far as we can tell, we share DNA with every living creature that we've found. And if you look at amoeba, if you look at the way an amoeba behaves, the entire body of the creature moves towards opportunities for procreation and food and away from poison and predators. If you look at the way an amoeba behaves, and we're related to that. So if you want to tell if a performance is working or not, you need to think about all of the features, you need to talk about all of the features of the performance, whether they're moving towards something that the character wants or away from from something that the character wants. And if you look at that one gesture, when she arrives, he's conflicted. You can see it, right? Part of him tries to pull away, and part of him wants to lean in. And that conflict is at the heart of drama, I think. So I think, it's George Khalil. He'd just come from working on the September Tapes film. He's an absolutely great actor. Okay, so what else did I want to show you? I've got about 5 minutes left. I want to just switch back to my amazing PowerPoint here. I don't use PowerPoint very often because it gives me a rash. But so, yes. So I used to hate wearing suits until I heard that when a guy wears a suit, that's like lingerie for men. I heard that it makes you look really good. See, all the girls are nodding, you know. So now I love wearing suits. So as the director, you're responsible. Some nervous smiles. As the director, you are responsible for setting the mood on set. So my attitude as the director is that I'm the daddy. It doesn't matter how old anybody is on set, I'm the daddy. I'm going to take care of things, which usually means asking somebody else to take care of it because I'm too busy. But I'm not interested in egos and battles on set. You have to set the mood. And I insist on saying action and cut. I absolutely insist on saying action and cut. I will not allow anybody else to say it. I also will not allow people to begin until I say action, and I won't allow them to stop until I say cut. And we work this out after the first couple of setups. This is what we agree. So everyone does speed, roll camera, sound ready, lights, everyone's ready. Okay, everyone's in position, good. And then there's this uncomfortable silence because Maxim still hasn't said action. It's amazing. And we have these mirror neurons. You know, has anyone heard of mirror neurons? So remember I was saying about if you imagine something, you experience it firsthand. So we have these mirror neurons, which mean that when we observe somebody doing something, we experience it with them. That's why you can watch somebody climbing a tree and you can know how to climb the tree when it's your turn. It's because of mirror neurons. We're experiencing what other people experience. So if you want to know how somebody feels, it's actually very easy, unless you're a psychopath or a robot, in which case, good luck. If you're a psychopathic robot, good luck to us. We've seen how that plays out. We know that that doesn't go well for us as a species. So all you have to do is look really carefully at somebody and ask yourself how you feel. That's all you have to do. Look at somebody really carefully and ask yourself, how do I feel? That's probably how they feel. So when I'm on set and I'm waiting for the moment to say action, I'm watching my cast really carefully. And depending on how I feel while I'm watching them, that's how I say action. I also say, so sometimes it'll be, I'm not even going to fake it, you know, sometimes it'll be action, sometimes it'll be action, sometimes it'll be action. And it sounds really silly. I'm just talking about the way you phrase a word, the way you say the word. And I'm sorry for it being such a subtle thing to even mention in a presentation like this, but try it. The way you say action shapes the performance. I also insist that nobody breaks character, nobody breaks the scene until I say cut, because that's where you get the amazing cutaways, right? Eisenstein did the famous study where you show a blank face and then you show food or a grave or flowers or whatever, and the audience will believe that the person feels something different depending on what you're intercutting the shots with. And the reason is this. When you're feeling emotional, your emotions get bigger and bigger and bigger because the nonverbal signals are there to communicate how you feel to other people in your environment. But when your emotions are so overwhelming that you're almost in shock, your personality goes on hold. There's nothing. Because nature is very efficient, and there comes a point where, no, really, that's a tiger. Let's not bother with, oh, I'm scared. Let's just be scared and pay attention to the tiger. So those blank expressions are what allow the audience to project their own feelings onto the characters. So I insist that you just sit and wait till I say cut. You wait and I'll decide. Now, I read an interesting article about relating to people, and I want to share it with you. It's a very interesting idea. It's very useful when you're trying to build team energy as a director very quickly. When you meet somebody, you can decide whether you're going to reveal things bit by bit, moment by moment with them, which takes time, but it's very safe. It's very slow, though. Or you can presume that we're all one. We're all connected. We're all one being. which means there is no discovery, there is only remembering. And because of a thing called reciprocal psychology, see, we're doing metaphysics, psychology. I'll get to recipes. If you make lasagna, it's really good to put 1 teaspoon of instant coffee in the mix. It tastes fantastic. Aroma. Try it. And nutmeg. So reciprocal psychology means as I relate to you, you will feel compelled to respond. If I treat you like a child, you will treat me like a parent. If I act like a child, you will parent me. The goal is for us to be adults together. But if you come into meeting somebody with the belief that we are all one, there's no danger of being judged, there's no threat. And this is the system of nonviolent communication. Anytime you judge somebody positively or negatively, you will get a bad reaction. So don't. Unless you want a bad reaction, obviously, which is fine. It's okay. It's like the Buddha said. The Buddha explained that attachment leads to pain. He never said don't have attachments. He just said it hurts, go for it. Sort of. So if on set, as the director or the producer or the assistant director, if you go into production knowing that we are all one, then you will emit this wonderful feeling of like we're all family. There's no journey to get to know each other here. We can all just relax. And everybody will. Just try it. It's incredibly powerful. Now, I met a crazy psychic a while ago. Well, I don't know. He might not have been crazy. But I met a guy who told me that all human emotion flows from one of 2 places. And those 2 places are love and fear. And I don't think I've found an emotion yet that didn't come from one of those 2 places. And fear is a very poor guide. So when you're on set and you're faced with something like, no, really, we have no camera, you can either fight with that, you can create the conflict, or I think I've got this down here, it's love and fear, there it is, love and fear. You can create more conflict and be more frightened, or you can be open-handed and engaging and loving. There's a beautiful old shamanic tale. They say there's a wolf, a white wolf and a black wolf in everybody's heads. And the white wolf is all about love and joy and forgiveness, and it's eternal and infinite and abundance. And the black wolf is all about fear and anger and resentment and injustice. And the question is, which one wins the fight? They're fighting for eternity. And the answer is whichever one you feed. So when you're on set and you're facing conflict, you're dealing with difficulties, when you're faced with creative challenges, you decide which it's going to be. You're not what you think you are what you think. Now, this is all very highfalutin and philosophical, and I know it's late in the day for this kind of stuff. But if you come on set as the daddy or the mummy, you can be the mummy or the daddy, it's the same. It doesn't matter. But if you're the parent, in a very nice, benign way, you allow everybody else to create. So, why make films? To change people. Also, to learn about yourself. And I think this question, why, is absolutely crucial. It's what I started talking about. But I also think sometimes we make films because we get paid for it. People say to me, why do you make films? Or what kind of films do you make? And I say, well, if they're paying, the answer is yes. And if they're not paying, I'm a storyteller. But I think it's important to know why you're making films, because it's very easy to get distracted from the task that you really set yourself. Sometimes you're so busy supporting yourself as a filmmaker, you don't make any films. So think about focusing on the why. So, Richard Bach wrote a book called Illusions, and it's a beautiful book, favorite book in the whole world. He says, life is like a film. You go to the cinema to learn and to have fun. And I think as long as we're making films that somehow enable people to understand themselves or their world, and it's fun at the same time, then I think we're onto a winner. And that's what I've tried to do with these other films. I don't know if I've got time to tell you about the thread of consciousness, because it's already 3 minutes past. What do you reckon? Do you want to hear it? Okay. Woohoo! So I have this theory. My theory is that if you look at films that are really easy for us to apprehend and engage with, they are the films that mimic dream. So if you imagine when you have a dream, you see a wide area of people, and there's one person who captures your attention, they capture your curiosity, and just as you're thinking, I wonder who that is, suddenly you're right next to them, and you're looking at them in a mid-shot in the dream. And you never notice that you've passed through space and time to get there. And the reason is they say that we don't have space or time within dream. Now, here's my theory. I think we engage with all of our lives as if it were a dream. But the experience we have has more linearity. There's more consistency to it. But our relationship with space and time doesn't exist. We don't really understand space or time. We just find ourselves from one moment to the next, as the existentialists said, thrown into a situation where we have memories and we have opinions and we live and we act in the now. So, if I'm right, then what really matters when we're making a film, if we want it to be invisible filmmaking, if we want it to be a journey that the audience doesn't even realize they're taking, they're just feeling it and having the experience, then we need to mimic the patterns of dream. And the thing that carries the dreamer through the dream is what I call the thread of consciousness. That is, whatever you're thinking about, that's what you dream. So as a filmmaker, you have a privileged position because you can give the audience the thoughts. You create the curiosity. You're the one creating that inner world model of the film. I'll tell you about the inner world model another time. Very interesting philosophical idea. But you're building that model for the audience. You're creating the curiosity, and then you're fulfilling it. So all you need to know, remember I was talking earlier about continuity, about how important that is, how important flow is. The most important continuity is this one. It's when you create that curiosity for the audience, and then you take them on that journey. You follow the thread of consciousness. Interesting idea, isn't it? It makes it easy for you to judge which shot next, which line of dialogue, which event in the plot. What should the character do? And you're creating that through line, that thread. So that's the thread of consciousness. So, ultimately, it's all about the love. I just thought I'd put that in there at the end. Anyway, in my experience, things don't go the way you expect them to, but they often go the way they're supposed to. So it's better to be abundant and open and happy and allow these unexpected creative developments to occur. When you get on set and you don't know what's happening, but the wrong actors arrived, or the wrong cast, the wrong hat for the character, roll with it, because very often in those moments, you create the best work. Okay, I'm over time. Thank you very much.